Native Instruments Maschine is well known for their beat sequencing software. But hey, what about mixing in Maschine? Well, the question is, how do you integrate Maschine as a VST in your DAW, in this example, Logic Pro X? Let's get into the video. Hello friends of the internet, it's Vibe Synthetic, your wave producer, bringing you the best production tutorials, tips and tricks, and even inspire you through my wave music releases. Now today, we are going to talk about how are we going to integrate Maschine and Logic Pro together so that Maschine can act as a VST in Logic. Now as you guys may know, Maschine is a good beat sequencer, but when it comes to mixing in Maschine, it just doesn't do the cut. So how do we get Maschine to work with Logic so that we can mix our tracks from Maschine into Logic via the individual tracks? By the way, if you're new to this channel, welcome to my channel. Remember to smash that like button, hit the subscribe button below, and also hit that notification bell icon so that whenever I release these kinds of videos, you will get notified. Also, if you stay through to the end of this video, I do have a template for Maschine and Logic. But let me just discuss the basic principles of how to get it set up so that you guys are educated about getting Maschine and Logic integrated. The first thing you need to do in Logic Pro is to set up a multi-output VST. Now what does this allow is that Logic can read the VST and route it to multiple tracks within a summing folder. Let's have a look.
Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to load a software instrument. Click on the plus icon. And I'm going to select AU Instruments, Native Instruments under the Maschine, multi-output 16x stereo. Now what this means is basically Logic will load Maschine as multiple outputs, reading Maschine as a VST that can load out different signals to different tracks. And then I'm going to click Create. Alright, so now we do have our Maschine set up.
Now that you have loaded Maschine as a multi-output VST in Logic, the next thing you want to do is to set up the number of tracks corresponding to the number of sounds that you're going to use within a group in Maschine.
The first thing that I need y'all to do is to not look at Maschine. You have to set up Logic first. I'll pull up my mixer. Maybe just to avoid confusion, I'll just delete this track. As you can see at the bottom here in Logic, there's a plus and minus icon. This is what a multi-output track does. You can create additional tracks that will be routed to each Maschine sound. For this case, let's just say we want to use with 4 sounds, or maybe 3. A kick, a snare, and a hi-hat. I'll just rename this as kick, and I'll create 2 more for the snare and the hi-hat. Snare and the hi-hat. Now that you have 3 tracks done, next thing you need to do is set it up in a timeline so it shows. So I'm going to right click on the snare and the hi-hat, create track. And now we have kick, snare and hi-hat.
Okay, so the next step is the most crucial step for you so that you can make sure Logic can read Maschine in terms of the audio and MIDI signals coming into it. So how do you do that? First, you need to understand where to route your Maschine MIDI output and also your Machine's audio output for each individual sound in the group itself.
So the goal here is to set up Maschine as a MIDI input to Logic and Machine's audio as an output to Logic. So I'm just gonna use this group here, group A1, with 3 sounds that I have in mind, which is the kick, snare and hat. The first sound, I'll just rename it to kick. Second one, I'll rename it to snare. Third one, I'll rename it to hat. So head over to kick. Make sure you go to this icon over here, which is the circle icon. Click that and make sure you're on the sound, output, and the audio has to be under an external 1 destination. So this is sending the kick audio out to an external destination, which is this one. And then for the snare, you have to change it to external 2, and the hat, change it to external 3. So if you're using more than 3 sounds, it will have to go sequentially, like sound 4 will be external 4, sound 5 will be external 5, etc. So the next thing you need to set up is the MIDI input. Just go to the same tab, do not change anything, go to the input and go to kick and make sure it's on sound input under MIDI. Use the source as host and channel 1, snare, source as host, channel 2, and head, source as host, channel 3. The host is actually Logic, where you'll send the MIDI input, and the channel refers to each track. Let me just load up some samples so that you guys can actually hear what is going on and see what is going on between these tracks and Maschine. So I'm gonna just turn on my sampling mode in Maschine so that you can see that it's already loaded in. My kick, my snare, and my hi-hat. The kick, as you can see, I play it on my Maschine. It's reflecting the signal, the audio signal on the first track. Now the snare, it's reflecting the audio signal on the second track, and the hi-hats, it should be reflecting on this third track. So amazing, you've already set up the audio signal that's coming through Logic. The next thing you want to do is to actually start arranging your drums in Maschine. Now that you have a pattern in Maschine, what's next? How do you have your MIDI regions be read into your Logic timeline so that later on you can adjust the MIDI regions? The first thing you need to do is to ensure that your Maschine has another scene that is set up without a pattern. When you play back in Logic, it will play together with Maschine if you're on a scene with a pattern. So if you were to drag the MIDI into here, it will double play. So it will play in the timeline as well as in Maschine. First thing you need to do is to drag the pattern that you've created. Say that you are happy with this pattern. Go to this icon with these 3 bars at the side, click and hold, and drag it at the top. So now you can see that I have all of my MIDI patterns in the individual tracks in Logic. So I'm just gonna go back to Maschine, click scene 2 where there's no pattern on it, and then now go back to Logic and you can press play. I'm just gonna close Maschine. So there you go, you have the MIDI patterns reading the sounds out of Maschine based on the patterns that you already have loaded into your timeline. And the best part about this is you can control each and every track to add effects. So say the snare, I want to add an EQ, I'll add a compressor to the hi-hats. I can send these two to a reverb bars, and let's just play it again. Yeah, there you go. You've just integrated Maschine with Logic. Arranging in Maschine, mixing in Logic is the best thing that any producer who uses Logic and Maschine could have.
And that's it. That's how you get Logic to integrate better with Maschine as a multi-output VST. In this case, Logic can now read the MIDI files that's been dragged and dropped from Maschine, and also the audio files that's coming through every signal into the track that you set up as a multi-output VST within the Logic tracks. Yo, I really advise you guys to save this as a template. Otherwise, I do have a free Maschine Logic Pro template that is ready for you so that you can start off with your Maschine right, make your arrangements, and then mix it again in Logic. Right down in the description box below, free for download, so check that out. Meanwhile, let's have a look at this template that I've made for you guys so that your productions with Logic and Maschine can be super seamless.
So I do have a Maschine Logic Pro template that I've made specifically for the drum kit. So if you look at DR1, I have a Maschine loaded, and each sound has already their audio outputs and MIDI inputs set up to what I've just discussed earlier on. Hence, if you open up the mixer, you'll see that the drums are all grouped in this summing track with DR1 to DR16. You can use all 16 slots in Maschine. I've also grouped them based on a send to a parallel compression tracks, because sometimes you might want to parallel compress your drums. I've color coded them in pink in the summing track folder. There's also other stuff that I've already set up. So I have bass, synth, samples and effects. The only part that is Maschine is always the drums, because mostly producers like to arrange drums in Maschine. These bases, synths, samples and effects are just other folders, which is not a summing folder, that contains VST or audio file tracks that you can load up anytime to create your own music as a start in this production template.
And that's all I have for you guys today for this episode on my channel. If you guys are new to my channel, hey, welcome. You'll find more Maschine and even Logic Pro tips and tutorials. So remember to smash that like button, hit the subscribe button as well, and lastly, remember to turn on the post notification bell so that whenever I release awesome videos like this, you guys will get notified, and then you guys will benefit from the tutorials that I'm about to give you guys in the future. And I'm Vibe Synthetic. I'm signing off. Peace.